everybody. Welcome back to Coffee and the Cross. I am Steve, your host, and for those who have been following along, we're in the middle of Flawed Men, Faithful God series, a study of the early leaders discussed in Genesis. Well, we have seen how even going all the way back to Adam, no matter how flawed men are, or how failed they become at times, God still was very faithful and forgave them for their shortcomings and their failures. But before we dive into the next flawed leader, today it's a little cooler for the middle of April here in the Northeast. It went from 90 last Thursday to freeze warnings. What a change. But today, I'm drinking out of another You Were Here mug, the Virginia mug with the Blue Ridge Mountains. Love it. Love the outside. It reminds me of some of the places I've seen in Virginia. I've been going there since I was a kid. And I'm drinking a light roast made from Smoketown Coffee Roasters. I gotta admit, it's not my favorite hot, but I did make cold brew with it, and that to me is much better. So maybe this Smoketown, this particular blend is more of a cold brew than a hot. But I did like it, and I'm having some iced also later on this week, I hope, because it's supposed to warm up. And you know, we're talking about Isaac, Rebecca having Jacob. And I started to do a script for this like I normally do. And I got to admit, I'm like 2 or 3 pages into it, and I just don't know where to stop. This may wind up being a 2-parter. Isaac and Rebecca having a hard time getting pregnant, so they prayed. And it says God heard their prayers and Rebecca became pregnant. Genesis 25:22 through 26a. It tells us that the babies jostled each other within her. And she prayed, "Why is this happening to me?" She inquired of the Lord, "Lord, why?" And he said, "2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. One will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." When the time came for her to give birth, there were 2 boys in her womb. The first one came out was red, and his whole body was hairy. They named him Esau. I'm assuming that means hairy. But after this, his brother came out, and it says, with his hand grasping Esau's heel, and he was named Jacob. So from the very beginning, even from before they took their first breath, Esau and Jacob were at each other. Seems to me to be a little more than sibling rivalry. Feels like a war. And God knew this. God let Rebecca in on the secret. And now as they grew up, they were interested in completely different things. Esau became more of an outdoorsman, became a skillful hunter. Some might call a man's man. While Jacob seems like he was a little more of a mama's boy, a homebody of sorts, because it says Jacob was content to stay by the tents. Sounds like a mama's boy to me. How about you? I'm not knocking it, because being a mama's boy can have its perks, right? I mean, one time Jacob was making what I'm thinking was a vegetarian stew, a lentil stew, when Esau came in and said he was famished. I can honestly say I don't think I've really ever used that word much, famished. At least for how hungry I was. But it says Esau was famished. So what's Jacob do? Uses it to his advantage. And says to Esau, "First, sell me your birthright." Esau must have thought he was gonna die of hunger, so he said, "What good is birthright to me?" Eventually, he sold him his birthright, and Jacob gave him some of the stew. And I know we're talking about Jacob here, but I have to wonder. It says when Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, daughter of Beeri, the Hittite, and Basmath, daughter of Elon the Hittite. And this just kind of baffled me a little bit. They were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. All right, So my question is this. How bad of a daughter-in-law do you have to be to get a mention in the opening book of the Bible? The one collection of books that outsells every other collection in history. I mean, really, how bad of a daughter-in-law or daughter-in-laws do you have to be? Anyway, something to think about. But Isaac's getting older at this point, so he wants to give Esau his blessing as the firstborn. Rebekah overhears the conversation between Isaac and Esau and inserts her ideas into her husband's plans and tells Jacob to go grab a couple of young goats. She says, I'm going to prepare them just how your father likes them. And Jacob says, wait a minute, he's going to notice I'm not as hairy as Esau. Well, she said, let's put some of the leather on your hands and we're going to dress you up in your brother's clothes. And that's going to trick Isaac into thinking Jacob was Esau. And it worked. Fast forward a few minutes after he walks out of Dad's bedroom, Esau was livid when he came home and found out. He threatened to kill Jacob. So Mom came up with another idea. Went in and talked to Isaac to have Isaac tell Jacob to go find a wife not from the Hittite women. Wow, again, goes back to that daughter-in-law thing, right? How do you tell me you have a favorite son without telling me you have a favorite son? Well, at this point, Jacob is in unfamiliar land. And during this time, he has a dream. And in the dream, Jacob is told the same thing as was told to his grandfather and his father. I will give you this land, and I will make your descendants like the dust of the earth. I am the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I am with you, and I will watch over you wherever you go. So Jacob made a vow. If God will be with me and watch over me on this journey and give me food and clothes, I will give him a tenth of everything I earn. Fast forward a little bit more and we see Jacob getting treated like he treated his brother by being tricked. I mean, talk about careful what you ask for, right? What goes around comes around, all those cute little sayings. God knew it was going to happen. Jacob came to his uncle's, I'll call it neighborhood, and saw his Uncle Laban's daughter Rachel, and he fell head over heels in love with her. And after a month of living there and working, Uncle Laban said, Hey Jacob, you shouldn't be working for nothing. Tell me what your wages should be. Jacob said, well, since he was in love with Rachel, he said, I'll work 7 years in return for your daughter Rachel. So they agreed. 7 years were up. Jacob said to Uncle Laban, Hey, it's been 7 years and my time is completed. Now give me my wife. I want to make love to her. So, yeah, it actually says that in my translation. So Uncle Laban threw a big wedding party. Nighttime came. Well, instead of bringing Rachel to Jacob, he tricked him. Brought Leah to Jacob. Now, Jacob didn't realize it until the morning. I guess he partied a little too much to notice the change. I mean, really, Jacob, how does it feel? The old bait and switch doesn't feel so good, does it? Well, in the morning when Jacob finds out, he confronts Uncle Laban and is told, You know, it doesn't make sense for me to give the younger daughter away before the older one, does it? Tell you what, work for me another 7 years and I'll give you Rachel too. But first, you need to finish the wedding week with Leah. Well, Jacob reluctantly agreed, but he loved Rachel, so he agreed. And it says Jacob's love for Rachel was greater than his love for Leah. The next line is something that amazes me. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he allowed her to conceive, but Rachel remained childless. Interesting. But I love the fact that the Lord saw. You know, it got me thinking of a time when Jesus was walking and came across the funeral procession. And in it, I'm going to paraphrase here. I don't remember the exact part of scripture, but it says Jesus noticed the woman amongst all the others. You know, back then they had professional mourners. And when there was a giant funeral procession, it was a lot of people, and it was Jesus and his disciples walking across. And Jesus noticed the woman amongst all the others and talked to her. And it's no surprise to me that Jesus followed in his Father's footsteps. And I know 100% that he still sees us today. He sees where we're hurting. He sees where we're feeling good. He notices. He doesn't forget. But Leah became pregnant and gave birth and named him Reuben. She became pregnant again and named him Simeon. She became pregnant again and named him Levi. And conceived again and called him Judah. Now, if you're keeping score, it's 4-0 between Leah and Rachel, who Jacob loved more. Oh, Rachel definitely was keeping score, because next she says, "Here's my servant Bilhah. Sleep with her so I can have children through her and build a family." Well, Bilhah became pregnant and had a son called Dan, and then became pregnant again and named him Naphtali. Basically, Leah said, well, 2 can play at this game. So when Leah saw she stopped having children, she took her servant Zillah and gave her as a wife to Jacob also. And she had a son named Gad. And then Zillah had a second son, and called him Asher. Now, God listened again to Leah. And Leah became pregnant again and bore the son she called Issachar. And Leah became pregnant again and had a 6th son and named him Zebulun. Fast forward up to verse 22 of chapter 30 in Genesis. God remembered Rachel. Yeah, it says God remembered Rachel, as if God forgot about Rachel. How many times do we think God forgets us and where we are and what's going on? It's almost as if God led us to a place, left us to ourselves, and eventually, quote, he remembered, end quote. Yeah, I don't think that for a second. I don't think he forgets us. I don't think he forgot Rachel. I believe it was more of a, it's time, in my best Rafiki voice from The Lion King. God allowed her to conceive, and she named him Joseph. May the Lord add to me another son, she said. Well, Jacob wanted to leave, but Uncle Laban said, I realize that my increase is because of you. Name your wages to stay, and I'll pay them. So, Jacob basically said, your flock has increased because of me. So let's split the flocks. I will take every spotted, speckled sheep, dark-colored lamb, and spotted or speckled goat. That will be my wages. Now, I don't know anything about shepherding. I don't know anything about sheep or goats. But what I do know is when I read in the scriptures, Jacob was sneaky yet again. Because apparently, it says that Jacob put peeled branches directly in front of the flocks, so when they came to drink and were in heat, they mated in front of the branches. Must be something to that, because the young would be born with speckled or spots on them, thereby making them Jacob's, not Uncle Laban's. And to make matters worse, if the animals were not strong, he'd remove the branches, and they would be free from spots or speckles. This is how Jacob came to own a large flock, females and male servants, camels and donkeys. And things turned out bad, and God told Jacob that he had to get out of Dodge. So he went to his wives and said, "Hey, we got to get out of here." And they bolted. He didn't tell Laban, they just bolted with all that was his. 3 days later, Laban realized they left and went after them. God came to Laban in a dream and said, "Be careful not to say anything bad to Jacob." Actually, let me rephrase that. Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, good or bad. Well, Laban caught up to Jacob and asked him why he left. "Why'd you leave without saying anything? You deceived me. You carried off my daughters off like captives in a war. You have done a foolish thing. Now you've gone off to return to your father's land, but why did you steal my gods?" Small g. First off, I was afraid you would take your daughters away from me by force. But if you find anyone who has your gods, that person should not live. Jacob did not realize that Rachel had the gods under her saddle. So Laban searched and found nothing. Jacob asked, "What's my crime? Put all you have found here in front of our relatives and let them judge between me and you." Bottom line, Laban found nothing. He kissed his grandkids and said goodbye and went back to his tent. Well, Jacob also went his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." So he named that place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, and instructed them what to say. "Your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban and have remained there until now. I have cattle, donkeys, sheep, goats, male and female servants, and I'm sending you this message to my Lord that I might find favor in your eyes." And when the messengers returned to Jacob, "We went to your brother Esau, and now he's coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him." Wow. "I left. Esau wanted to kill me. I'm coming back. Esau wants to meet me, and he's bringing 400 men with him." So it says in verse 7, "In great fear and distress, Jacob divided the people who were with him in two groups, the flocks, the herds, and the camels as well. And he thought, if Esau comes and attacks one, that group that is left may escape." Jacob then prayed. I find it interesting before I go into the prayer. He was in great fear and distress. After all God has brought him through, he's still in great fear and distress. And then Jacob prayed, "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, you who said to me, 'Go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper.' I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become two camps. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper, and I will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted." You know, I love that he admitted that he's afraid. What's happening? He wants to hear it. He wants to feel what you're saying, how you're feeling it. He knows. He wants to be there for you. He's your father. I forget it a lot, too many times. I forget to say, I'm not worthy, or I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness, just as Jacob said here. Even though he was afraid, he voiced it to God. I'm afraid. Well, he spent the night, and from what he had with him, he selected a gift for his brother. 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 female camels with their young, 40 cows and 10 bulls, and 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. And he put them in care of his servants, and said to his servants, "Go ahead of me and keep space between the herds." And he instructed the one in the lead, "When my brother Esau meets you and says, 'Who do you belong to?' They belong to your servant Jacob, and they are gifts sent to my lord Esau. He is coming behind us." And the second he instructed the same thing. So Jacob's gifts went on ahead of him, but he himself spent the night in camp. And that night, Jacob got up, took 2 female servants, his 2 wives, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. And after he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone. And it says here in verse 24 of chapter 32, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. And when the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. The man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What is your name?" Jacob answered. "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But the man replied, "Why do you ask my name?" Then he blessed them there, and Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." So the sun rose, and he was limping because of the hip. And that's why, to this day, according to Genesis, the Israelites do not eat the tendon attached to the socket of the hip, because the socket of Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon. Wow, Jacob wrestled with God. Every time I read this, I wonder, when it says the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. The man saw that he could not overpower him, but it was God. So I don't know about that. I don't understand that. I just question, what is it about that? Was it an angel of God? And it was God, but he didn't want to hurt him? Or just took it in stride and said, "You know what? He's a strong dude"? I don't know. I don't want to wrestle with God. I just want to live for him. But as we move forward, Jacob meets Esau, and he was afraid. He put the female servants and their children up front, put Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph in the rear. He himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him and cried. They wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and children. "Who are these with you?" Jacob answered, "These are the children God has graciously given your servant." Then the female servants and their children approached and bowed down, Leah and her children. Last of all came Joseph and Rachel, and they too bowed down. What is the meaning of all these flocks and herds I met? To find favor in your eyes, my lord, he said. But Esau said, I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. Jacob said, No, please, if I have found favor in your eyes, accept this gift from me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God, now that you have received me favorably. Please accept the presents that was brought to you, for God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need. And because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted it. So Esau said, Let's be on our way, I'll accompany you. My Lord knows that the children are tender, and that I must care for the ewes and the cows that are nursing their young. If they are driven hard just one day, the animals will die. So let my Lord go on ahead, while I move along slowly at the pace of the flocks and the herds before me. And Esau said, Let me leave some of my men with you. Why do that? Just let me find favor in the eyes of my Lord. So Esau started on his way back. Jacob, however, went to Succoth, where he built a place for himself and made shelters for his livestock. And that is why it's called Succoth. After Jacob came from Paddan Aram, he arrived safely in Shechem in Canaan and camped within sight of the city. For 100 pieces of silver he bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, the plot of ground where he pitched his tent, and there he set up an altar. So I'm going to stop this one here for now. There's so much more going on in here with Jacob and his history. But at this point, where we're at right now, I just want to share that, wow, again, a man who walked with God, he wrestled with God, he was afraid, multiple times he was afraid, he tricked, schemed, one with the help of his mom, one on his own, left, got scammed himself, bolted, left, but still thanked God for everything and realized that he was not worthy of anything. And God blessed him anyway, even all the conniving, even all the scheming. Instead of just letting God do what God was going to do, he thought he needed to help him. How many times do we do that? How many times do we run ahead of God? Or how many times do we lag behind God instead of just watching God? I mean, it's incredible, right? We just let it happen. Instead of being focused on God and what he has for us and wants us to do, we tend to try and do things on our own. I don't know about you, but we were talking about our D group the other night. You know, it doesn't matter. Well, let me rephrase that. What we were talking in the D group the other night was that God has a much better plan than we can ever imagine. We can think that we've got the best plan in the world. We think that our plan is better than anything else. We think that if I could just have this, then that's in the will of God and that's the plan. And when God says, not so fast, I've got something better, how many times do we have a hissy fit, cry, whine, moan, and groan, and not wait for what God has for us? Because it's so much better than what we have ourselves. It's so much better than what we can think about when we're in God's plan. And frankly, it's so much easier to walk in God's plan than trying to push against his plan. God's going to work his miracles regardless. He honestly doesn't need you to accomplish his will. But he wants you. He wants to use you. And we just went through Paul's story in Acts for the past 29 weeks, plus a couple in between Easter and whatnot. And we were talking during the study about how God used Paul, and more importantly, how Paul was allowed God to use him. I mean, he was very, very adamant that those that believe in Jesus needed to be killed. He was met by Jesus on his way to Damascus, and that same Bible uses the word fervor, that same desire, that same drive, that same will that Paul had as Saul prior to God meeting him on the road to Damascus, was the same will, drive, and desire he had for people to get saved. I mean, it even says in the last two or three chapters, when he was given his testimony to those in charge, towards the end there, one of the guys, I believe it was Felix, said, or Festus or Felix, I forget which, said to him, "You're insane. Do you really think that you're going to win me over and become a follower of Jesus?" And without question, without thought, Paul just went ahead and said, "Yeah, I do. I'm going to say it regardless. And I wish that you have the same thing I have, minus the chains that are around my hands and feet, because I'm still a prisoner." Yeah, he didn't question it. He was bold. He was confident. And that's what we were talking about. We need to be bold. We need to be confident. Not cocky, but confident to know God's in charge. God's got it all. It doesn't matter. We need to remember that. And Jacob was remembering that. Jacob knew God was in charge. So, hey, everybody, thanks for listening. Next week, we're going to finish up Jacob. I usually write a script for these, but I just got so far into the script, I just had to stop because there's so much here with Jacob. His story, there's a lot in Genesis about him, but there's a lot of his story that I see we make a lot of those same mistakes. So, hey, till next time, when you fall, and we always will, our knees are a great place to stop and pray to God on our way back up. Have a great week, everybody.